Have you ever stopped to think why some people completely transform their lives while others remain stuck in the same situations year after year? Why did Elon Musk rise from obscurity to build an empire while millions of equally intelligent people struggle to pay their bills? Why did Steve Jobs revolutionize technology while others only dream of innovation? The answer lies in the mind, and today I'm going to share a powerful story that will forever change how you view success. Change your mindset, and your life will change. This isn't just a motivational phrase, it's a scientific truth, a universal law that governs the destiny of every human being on this planet. It's a timeless truth proven time and again by the lives of extraordinary individuals throughout history. Napoleon Hill, after studying over 500 millionaires for more than 20 years, uncovered the secret behind all success and summed it up in a powerful sentence in his book, Think and Grow Rich. You become what you think about. But if this is true, if this formula is so simple, why do 95% of people in the world struggle to achieve success? Why do so many intelligent, hardworking, and dedicated individuals still live lives of mediocrity? Before we embark on this journey of transformation, I need to know, are you truly ready to change? If you're watching this video just for entertainment, you can stop here. But if you're genuinely willing to question your limiting beliefs and transform your mindset, leave an "I'm ready to change" in the comments right now. I want to see how many people are truly committed to their transformation. Today, I'm going to share a story that will not only shift your perspective on giving and receiving, but completely revolutionize your understanding of mental limitations, the true meaning of success, and the extraordinary power that lies within each of us. It's a story about a man who spent years believing he was one thing when he was actually something entirely different. It's a story about you, about me, about all of us. By the end of this journey, you won't just hear an inspiring story. You'll learn powerful words and concepts that will enrich not only your vocabulary, but your way of thinking, your way of seeing the world, and most importantly, your way of seeing yourself. But before we dive into this transformation, let me ask a crucial question. When was the last time you questioned your own limitations? When was the last time you stopped to consider whether the barriers you see in your life are real or just mental constructs? Once upon a time, in one of the busiest train stations in the country, a place where thousands of people pass through, every day rushing to their destinations, carrying dreams, worries, hopes, and fears, lived a man who had made the station his home, begging his profession, and resignation his philosophy of life. Every day, without exception, he woke before the sun rose, positioned himself strategically near the tracks where the train stopped, and began his daily routine, surviving by begging for alms from passengers waiting for their trains. His technique was simple but perfected over the years. He knew exactly where to stand to maximize visibility, how to read people's facial expressions to identify those most likely to help, and even how to vary his tone of voice depending on the type of passenger approaching. For him, this was more than a routine, it was his identity. He didn't just beg, he was a beggar. This wasn't just a temporary occupation, it was who he believed he was at his core. And that belief shaped every aspect of his existence. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever defined yourself by your current circumstances? Have you ever looked in the mirror and said, "This is all I am"? If so, write "I've limited myself" in the comments. Let's see how many people have the courage to admit this. Years passed, 5, 10, 15 years of the same routine. The man had become part of the station's landscape. The staff knew him, some regular passengers were aware of his existence, and he had created a comfort zone within his uncomfortable situation. He had specialized in being what he believed he was, a professional beggar. But here's what's fascinating about human nature. We always become what we believe we are. If you believe you're poor, you'll find 1,000 ways to stay poor. If you believe you're not smart enough, you'll unconsciously sabotage your learning opportunities. If you believe you don't deserve success, you'll automatically reject the opportunities that come your way. This man had built his entire identity around the idea that he was someone who needed to receive from others to survive. He never questioned that premise. He never wondered if there was another way to live. He never considered the possibility that perhaps he was operating under a fundamentally false belief about himself. But the universe has an interesting way of sending us teachers when we're ready to learn. And this man's teacher was about to arrive in the form of a successful businessman. One day, it was a rainy Tuesday in November, and I remember these details because they're important to understanding how seemingly insignificant moments can change the course of an entire life. While the man was begging in his usual spot, he noticed something different. A man had stepped off the 10:30 train, but this wasn't an ordinary passenger. There was something about his posture, his walk, his presence that radiated success. His suit was impeccably tailored, not just expensive, but with that perfect fit that only comes from investing in quality. His Italian leather shoes were polished to a mirror-like shine. His leather briefcase looked expensive, functional, the kind of accessory carried by high-level executives. But more than his clothes, it was his energy that stood out. He walked with purpose, with confidence, with that magnetic presence successful people naturally develop. His shoulders were back, his chin slightly raised, his eyes focused and determined. Everything about him screamed financial success. The beggar, with years of experience observing people, immediately categorized this man as a premium target. This man must be very wealthy, he thought. If I can appeal to his compassion, if I choose the right words, if I touch his empathy, maybe he'll give me a truly generous amount. Maybe 50 reis, or even 100. Fueled by this hope, the beggar approached the businessman. He had mentally rehearsed his approach. He'd start with a respectful greeting, briefly explain his difficult situation, and then make his request humbly but persuasively. He positioned himself in the businessman's path, made eye contact, and extended his hand in his universal gesture of begging. "Sir," he began in his most respectful tone, "I'm going through tough times and would be very grateful if you could help me with any amount." Now, here's where the story takes a completely unexpected turn. Instead of ignoring him, as 80% of passengers did, or simply tossing a few coins and moving on, as the other 20% did, the businessman did something that had never happened in all the man's years of begging. The businessman stopped completely. He looked directly into the beggar's eyes, not with pity or disdain, but with genuine curiosity. And then he asked a question that cut through years of mental conditioning like a sharp blade through silk. "Do you always just take from others?" the businessman asked in a calm but piercing voice. "In your entire life, have you ever given anything to anyone?" If you've ever had a moment in your life where a simple question left you completely speechless, leave "I've been there" in the comments. Because sometimes the simplest questions carry the power to transform entire lives. The beggar was literally paralyzed. In all his years of begging, no one had ever questioned the basic premise of his existence. No one had challenged his right to receive. No one had suggested that perhaps there was reciprocity involved in the equation of generosity. His mind raced, trying to process this entirely new question. He had spent so many years focused on receiving that he had never considered the possibility of giving. But wait, what could he give? He was just a beggar. He had no money, no possessions, no special skills. How could he give anything to anyone? Confused and slightly defensive, he responded with the only logic he knew. "Sir, I'm just a beggar. I survive by asking for alms from generous people like you. I have nothing to give anyone. If I had something to give, I wouldn't be here asking for help." The businessman listened to this response with the same calm he had when asking the question. Then he smiled, not a condescending or sarcastic smile, but the smile of someone about to share a profound truth. "If you believe you have nothing to give," the businessman said, letting each word sink in fully before continuing, "then you also have no right to ask for anything." Pause for a moment and let that statement sink into your mind. If you believe you have nothing to give, then you also have no right to ask for anything. The businessman continued, "I'm a businessman. I built my fortune on one fundamental principle, the exchange of value. I deeply believe in reciprocity, in mutual value. If you can offer me something of value, anything of value, I can give you something in return. But if you have nothing to offer, if your only proposition is that I give and you take, then that's not a transaction I'm interested in. And then, something even more striking. Let me ask you a second question. Do you really believe you have nothing to offer the world? Or have you simply never stopped to think about what you could offer? With that, the businessman checked his watch, wished the man a good day, boarded his train, and left, leaving the beggar alone with thoughts that would torment him and, eventually, set him free. Now let me pause this story for a moment and ask you directly. When was the last time you truly thought about what you have to offer the world? I'm not talking just about your professional skills or obvious talents. I'm talking about anything. Your unique perspective, your life experience, your ability to listen, your capacity to make someone smile, anything that could add value to another person's life. If you've never seriously thought about this, write "never thought about it" in the comments. And if you already know your unique value, write "I know my value" in the comments. The beggar stood there for a long time after the train left. The businessman's words echoed in his mind like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. Do you always just take from others? Have you ever given anything to anyone? For the first time in decades, he began to question the narrative he had built about his own life. I've been begging for so long, he thought, but no one ever told me this before. He wasn't rude or cruel. He didn't humiliate or belittle me. He just asked me a question I'd never considered. Then came a second wave of reflection. If I can't offer anything in return, why should people give me anything? What's really motivating them? Is it pity? Is it compassion? Is it a sense of moral duty? And if it's just that, then am I really just taking advantage of others' kindness without contributing anything in return? This realization hit like a punch to the stomach, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. He had spent years being a one-way consumer of others' generosity. He took, but never gave anything back. But then came the most unsettling question of all. What can I give? I'm just a beggar. I have no money, no home, no material possessions, no formal education, no technical skills. How can I give anything to anyone? Yet the businessman's words kept echoing. Do you really believe you have nothing to offer the world? Or have you simply never stopped to think about what you could offer? That night, for the first time in years, the beggar couldn't sleep. He lay in his usual spot at the station, staring at the ceiling, his mind spinning in circles around these revolutionary questions. If I want to receive, he murmured to himself, repeating the businessman's words, I must first give. But give what? How? To whom? Let me share something with you about the nature of personal transformation. It always begins with discomfort. It always starts when something or someone forces us to question our core assumptions about ourselves and life. It's always uncomfortable because it means everything we thought we knew about our identity might be wrong. 2 full days passed. 2 days during which the beggar didn't ask for a single cent from anyone, not because he didn't need the money, but because he couldn't stop thinking about the businessman's words. He was going through an existential crisis, questioning not just his survival strategy, but his very identity. He watched people pass by, but now with different eyes. Instead of seeing them only as potential donors, he began to observe them as complex human beings, each carrying their own burdens, joys, and needs. Maybe, he thought on the second day, the problem isn't that I have nothing to give. Maybe the problem is that I've never looked for what I could give. On the third day, while sitting in his usual spot, still lost in thought, something caught his attention in a way he'd never noticed before. There was a small patch of wildflowers growing in a neglected area near the train tracks. They had always been there, probably for years, but he had never truly seen them. Now, looking with new eyes, he was fascinated by the simple beauty of these flowers. They were wild daisies, some small yellow flowers he didn't know the name of, and some wild roses that had sprouted spontaneously. Their colors were vibrant, bright yellow, pure white, delicate pink, lush green leaves. Amid the gray industrial environment of the train station, these flowers represented life, beauty, nature, something pure and untouched by urban harshness. And in that moment of silent contemplation, an idea was born. Not a grand or complex idea, but a simple one, almost childlike in its simplicity. What if, instead of just asking, I offered something in return? What if I gave a flower to every person who helped me? At first, the idea seemed almost ridiculous. What would an ordinary person do with a wildflower? Why would anyone value it? But then he remembered the businessman's words. If you can offer me something of value, anything of value, I can give you something in return. Maybe the value wasn't monetary. Maybe it was symbolic, emotional, aesthetic. Maybe a flower represented a moment of beauty in someone's hectic day. Maybe it was a gesture of gratitude, a way to say, thank you for helping me, beyond words. If you're starting to grasp the power of a simple shift in perspective, leave a like on this video now. It helps me tremendously and shows me you're truly absorbing this transformative lesson. Determined to test his new theory, the beggar stood up, walked to the flower patch, and with great care and respect, picked a small handful of the prettiest ones. He held them as if they were precious treasures because to him, in that moment, they were exactly that. His first attempt to transform from someone who only took to someone who also gave. He returned to his usual spot, but now with a completely different energy. It was no longer the desperate energy of someone needing to take from others. It was the hopeful energy of someone who had something to offer, however simple. When the next person approached, a middle-aged woman carrying a heavy bag, looking stressed about her delayed train, he made his usual approach, but with a crucial modification. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "I'm going through tough times and would be very grateful if you could help me." And then, for the first time in his life as a beggar, he added, "And if you help me, I'd like to give you this flower as a token of my gratitude." The woman's reaction was immediate and completely unexpected. Her eyes lit up. A genuine smile crossed her stressed face. "What a beautiful gesture," she said, pulling a bill from her wallet, a significantly larger amount than he typically received. "This flower is exactly what I needed to brighten my day." She took the flower carefully, smelled its subtle fragrance, and smiled again. "Thank you for this. You don't know how much this means to me today." The beggar was stunned. Not only had she given him more money than usual, but she had thanked him. She had said the flower meant a lot to her. Suddenly, he no longer felt like someone taking advantage of others' kindness. He felt like someone who had created a genuine exchange of value. The next interactions followed a similar pattern. People not only accepted the flowers with joy, but many stopped to comment on their beauty, to thank him for the thoughtful gesture, and some even asked where he had found such lovely flowers. More importantly, the donations increased significantly. But it wasn't just the money that was changing, it was the entire nature of the interaction. Before, he felt invisible, like an inconvenient obstacle people had to navigate or deal with quickly. Now he was having real conversations, genuine human exchanges, moments of true connection with other human beings. If you've ever experienced the power of giving something, even something small, to another person, write, "I know the power of giving" in the comments. In the days that followed, something even more extraordinary began to happen. The beggar started noticing fascinating patterns in his new business. When he had fresh, beautiful flowers to offer, people were noticeably more generous. Their donations were larger, their interactions warmer, and many returned the next day specifically looking for him and his flowers. But when the flowers ran out, when he had nothing to offer but his need, donations dropped drastically. Interactions became quick and impersonal again. People reverted to seeing him as just another beggar. "It's true," he thought with growing excitement. "People really do like receiving something in return. They feel better about giving when they know they're getting something too, even if it's just a simple flower." But the deepest discovery was yet to come. As he watched people carry his flowers, he saw a businesswoman place her wild rose in a glass of water on her desk. He could see through her office window. He saw an elderly man give his daisy to his granddaughter when she came to pick him up at the station. He saw a young student press her flower into her book, preserving it as if it were something precious. These simple flowers were creating moments of joy, beauty, and connection in people's lives. They had real value, even if not monetary. And he was the source of that value. A week passed since his first flower experiment. The beggar had transformed completely, not just in his actions, but in his perception of himself. He no longer saw himself as someone who merely received charity. He saw himself as someone who offered something valuable and received fair compensation in return. And then, as if the universe wanted to test his new philosophy, the businessman appeared at the station again. It was the same Tuesday the following week, almost the same time, the same train, the same platform, but everything else had changed completely. The beggar recognized the businessman immediately. His heart raced, not out of nervousness but excitement. He had something to show, something to prove, something to share. With a confidence he had never felt before, the beggar approached the businessman carrying his small bouquet of carefully selected wildflowers. "Sir," he said, his voice filled with gratitude and enthusiasm, "do you remember me? From the question you asked me last week?" The businessman stopped, looked at him closely, and a smile of recognition crossed his face. "Of course I remember. You're the man who believed he had nothing to give." "Exactly," the former beggar replied. "And today I have something to show you. Today I have something to give. If you help me with a contribution, I'll give you these beautiful flowers in return. It's a fair exchange. Your money for my gratitude and something beautiful to brighten your day." The businessman stood silent for a moment, observing not just the flowers, but the complete transformation in the man's posture, energy, and body language. Where there had once been a hunched, submissive, desperate beggar, there now stood a man standing tall, confident, and proud of his offer. Smiling broadly, the businessman pulled a generous bill from his wallet and handed it to the man. "I'd be honored to receive your flowers," he said, "and more importantly, I'd be honored to do business with you." As they exchanged money for flowers, the businessman added something that would change the man's life forever. "Do you know what happened here? You truly understood the fundamental value of exchange, of reciprocity, of creating mutual value. Today, you're no longer just someone who asks. You've become a businessman." The train arrived, but before boarding, the businessman said one last thing. "The difference between a beggar and a businessman isn't the amount of money each has. The difference is in the mindset. A beggar believes he can only receive. A businessman knows he must give to receive. Congratulations on your transformation." If you're realizing how a single shift in mindset can revolutionize an entire life, leave "I understand the transformation" in the comments. The former beggar stood there watching the train depart, the businessman's words echoing in his mind like celestial music. "You've become a businessman?" For a long time, he reflected on that statement. Am I really a businessman now? He wondered. And then, like a bolt of light cutting through the darkness, he had an epiphany that would change not just his career, but his fundamental identity. I've always been a businessman, he realized. I just didn't know it. All these years I was operating under a false belief about my own identity. I believed I was a beggar, so I acted like a beggar. But in reality, I always had entrepreneurial potential. I always had something to offer. I just never discovered what it was. This realization was like unlocking a mental door that had been sealed for decades. If he had always been a businessman disguised as a beggar, what else about himself had he misunderstood? What other skills, talents, and potentials were hidden beneath layers of limiting beliefs? Now I know the secret to true success, he thought. It's not about asking or receiving. It's about finding something valuable you can give, and then exchanging that value for what you need. People aren't giving me money out of pity. They're paying for the flowers I offer them. They're paying for the joy, the beauty, the moment of human connection I provide. That means I don't just have a product, I have a business. And with that realization came a decision that would change the course of his life forever. That same afternoon, the man did something that would have seemed impossible just 2 weeks earlier. He left the train station with the intention of never returning. As a beggar. But wait, you might be thinking, how can someone build a real business selling wildflowers? How could this small change lead to a genuine life transformation? The answer lies in the power of an entrepreneurial mindset combined with consistent action. Let me tell you what happened in the months that followed, because this part of the story is even more remarkable than the beginning. First, the former beggar began studying flowers. He went to the local public library. Yes, he discovered he could use the library for free, and started learning about different types of flowers, their blooming seasons, how to care for them, and how to preserve them longer. Second, he expanded his collection area. Instead of relying only on the wildflowers at the station, he began exploring parks, abandoned green spaces, and even asked for permission to collect flowers being discarded from private gardens. Third, he improved his presentation. He started making small bouquets instead of giving single flowers. He learned to combine them by color and fragrance. He began wrapping them in clean newspaper to give them a more professional look. Fourth, and most importantly, he expanded his sales locations. Instead of just selling at the train station, he started visiting offices, restaurants, hospitals, anywhere people might appreciate a moment of beauty in their day. Within 3 months, he was earning more money selling flowers than he had in years of begging. Within 6 months, he had rented a small apartment. Within a year, he had officially registered his small flower business. But the most profound transformation wasn't financial. It was mental. He had gone from someone who saw himself as a victim of circumstances to someone who saw himself as a creator of value. He had gone from someone who asked for charity to someone who offered beauty. He had gone from someone defined by his limitations to someone defined by his possibilities. Now let me share the most incredible part of this story, the reunion. 6 months after that transformative conversation, in the same train station where it all began, 2 well-dressed men met on the platform. One carried an executive leather briefcase and wore a tailored suit, clearly a successful businessman. The other wore a sharp blazer, neatly pressed dress pants, and carried a small sample case. His shoes were polished, his posture confident, and there was an entrepreneurial energy in his movements. They recognized each other almost simultaneously, but it was the businessman who spoke first, with a look of genuine curiosity. "Excuse me, but I have a feeling we've met before. You seem familiar." The second man smiled, not the submissive, hopeful smile of a beggar, but the confident smile of someone who had, found his place in the world. "Yes, sir. We've met twice before, right here on this very platform. In fact, right in this exact spot where we're standing now." The businessman furrowed his brow, trying to connect the memory. This polished, well-dressed man before him didn't match any clear recollection he had of previous encounters at this station. "I remember talking to many people here over the years," the businessman said, "but I confess I can't place our specific conversation. Could you help me recall?" And then, with an even broader smile, the former beggar revealed his identity. "Sir, I'm the man who used to beg here at this station. The man you refused to give money to the first time because I had nothing to offer in return. And then, a week later, I'm the man you bought the first flowers from." The businessman's eyes widened in absolute surprise and admiration. For a moment, he was completely speechless, processing the extraordinary transformation he was witnessing. This is absolutely incredible," the businessman exclaimed. "You're the same person? The man who was begging here just 6 months ago? But look at you. You're completely transformed. What happened? How is this change possible?" And here, my friends watching, is the answer that will change your life if you truly absorb it. Pay attention, because what this man is about to explain is the secret behind all genuine transformation. If you're realizing that this isn't just a story about a beggar, but a metaphor for the unlimited potential within each of us, leave "This is my story too" in the comments. The former beggar, now a successful flower entrepreneur, looked directly into the eyes of the man who had been his unwitting teacher and said, "Sir, what happened was exactly what you said would happen. I changed my mindset and my life changed completely. That day when you asked me if I had ever given anything to anyone, and when you told me that if I had nothing to offer, I had no right to ask for anything, you planted a mental seed that grew and transformed into a tree of possibilities. But let me be even more specific about what really changed, he continued, because this is important for anyone who wants to transform their own life. First, I stopped defining myself by my current circumstances. For years, I saw myself as a beggar because that's what I did. But you helped me realize that what we do is not who we are. We are defined by our potential, not our current situation. Second, I started looking for what I had to offer instead of focusing only on what I needed to receive. That shift in focus from what can I get to what can I give changed everything. When I started offering flowers, I wasn't just selling plants. I was selling moments of joy, beauty, human connection. Third, I realized I had been a businessman all along, I just didn't know it. I had customer relationship skills. I knew how to read people. I knew when and how to approach different personalities. I understood strategic positioning. I knew where to stand to maximize opportunities. I had persistence and dedication. I worked every day, regardless of the weather or circumstances. If you're realizing that you too might have unrecognized skills and potentials, write, "I have hidden potential too," in the comments. But the deepest change, the florist continued, was in how I see myself. I'm no longer someone who needs others' charity to survive. I'm someone who creates value, who solves problems, who improves people's lives. My flowers make people's days more beautiful. My presence brings a moment of joy to their routines. I'm no longer a burden on society. I'm a contributor. The businessman listened to this explanation with growing admiration and respect. When the florist finished, he extended his hand for a firm handshake. Not the condescending gesture of someone giving charity, but the respectful greeting between equals in the world of business. "This is truly extraordinary," the businessman said. "In 6 months, you didn't just change your financial situation, you transformed your entire identity. You've demonstrated something I've always believed but rarely seen happen so dramatically, that our mindset truly determines our reality." "But tell me," the businessman continued with genuine curiosity, "how's your business now? What's the next step in your entrepreneurial journey?" And here's where the story gets even more inspiring, because it shows that once you change your fundamental mindset, there are no limits to where that transformation can take you. "Actually," the florist replied with pride, "I'm here today for a very important business meeting. I'm traveling to the capital to meet with the owner of a luxury hotel chain. He wants to hire my services to provide fresh floral arrangements for all the lobbies of his hotels. If this meeting goes well, and I believe it will, I'll need to significantly expand my operation. I'll need to hire employees, rent a larger space, maybe even open a small physical shop. But the most incredible thing," he said, his eyes shining with an even bigger vision, "is that I've started teaching other beggars in the city about what I've learned. Some of them are starting their own small businesses, selling homemade products, offering simple services, finding ways to give value in exchange for what they receive. Because I realized something powerful. When you change your own mindset, you naturally want to help others change theirs too. Real success isn't just about improving your own life, it's about lifting others up with you." Now let me pause this story once more to speak directly to you watching, because this part is crucial for your own transformation. How many times have you defined yourself by your current circumstances? How many times have you said, "I'm just," and filled in the blank with a limitation? "I'm just an employee. I'm just a housewife. I'm just a student. I'm just someone with no experience." If you've ever limited yourself this way, leave "I've underestimated myself" in the comments, because recognizing this pattern is the first step to breaking it. The truth is, we're all like the beggar in this story. We all have entrepreneurial, creative, transformative potential hidden beneath layers of limiting beliefs. We all have something valuable to offer the world, even if we haven't discovered what it is yet. The businessman, clearly impressed and inspired by the transformation he was witnessing, said, "You know what impresses me most about your story? It's not just that you went from beggar to businessman, it's that you understood the fundamental principle that governs all genuine success. You can only receive in proportion to what you give. That principle works at every level of life. If you want more love, give more love." If you want more respect, treat others with more respect. If you want more opportunities, create opportunities for others. If you want more money, find ways to add more value to people's lives. You intuitively discovered one of the most powerful laws of the universe, the law of reciprocity. And once you understand this law and start applying it consciously, there are no limits to what you can achieve. The two men talked for a few more minutes, sharing insights about business, mindset, and the nature of personal transformation. It was a conversation between equals, two businessmen discussing business philosophy and growth strategies. When it was time to board their respective trains, they exchanged business cards. Yes, the former beggar now had professional business cards. João Silva, Nova Vida. Floriculture, bringing natural beauty to your day. It was a pleasure to properly meet you this time, the businessman said, and I hope we can stay in touch. I have some contacts in the hospitality industry who might be interested in your services. The pleasure was all mine, the florist replied, and thank you for planting the seed that changed my life. If it weren't for your question that day, I'd probably still be begging on this very platform. No, the businessman said with a wise smile. You would have found a way to transform eventually, because the seed was always inside you. I just helped you water it. And with that, they boarded their respective trains, heading toward their prosperous futures. Two businessmen, two creators of value, two living examples of the transformative power of a changed mindset. Now, let me share the deepest lessons from this story, because there are layers of wisdom here that can revolutionize not just your career, but your entire life. The first major lesson is about identity versus circumstances. For years, the protagonist of our story identified as a beggar because his circumstances were those of begging. But our true identity is not determined by our current situation. It's determined by our potential and how we choose to respond to our circumstances. You are not your current job. You are not your current bank account. You are not your current relationship status. You are not your past mistakes. You are a human being with unlimited potential, capable of extraordinary growth, change, and transformation. The second lesson is about the power of mental focus. When the beggar shifted his focus from "what can I get" to "what can I give," everything changed. His energy changed, his interactions changed, his results changed. Where is your focus right now? Do you spend more time thinking about what's missing in your life or what you can contribute? Do you focus on your problems or your possibilities? Do you concentrate on your limitations or your potential? The third lesson is about value and exchange. Genuine success always involves creating value for others. It's not about getting something for nothing. It's about finding ways to improve people's lives and being compensated for that improvement. The fourth lesson is about the gradual but powerful nature of transformation. The beggar's change didn't happen overnight. It was a process. First, the mental seed planted by the businessman's question, then days of reflection, then the idea of the flowers, then implementation, then refinement, then expansion. Real transformation is a process, not an event. Every small step in the right direction compounds over time to create dramatic change. If you're starting to see possibilities for your own transformation, leave "I'm seeing possibilities" in the comments. Now let's learn some powerful words from this story that can enrich not just your vocabulary, but your way of thinking about success and transformation. Mindset. This is perhaps the most important word in our entire discussion. Mindset refers to your established mental attitude or disposition. It's the lens through which you see and interpret the world. Your mindset determines your actions, and your actions determine your results. Reciprocity. This is the fundamental principle that transformed the beggar into a businessman. Reciprocity means the practice of exchanging things with others for mutual benefit. It's the understanding that healthy relationships, whether personal or professional, involve giving and receiving. Transformation. We're not talking about mere change, but complete transformation. Transformation means a thorough change in someone's or something's appearance, character, or circumstances. It's metamorphosis in the deepest sense. Potential. This word represents latent qualities or abilities that can be developed and lead to fulfillment. We all have untapped potential. The question is, will you discover and develop it? Value. In the context of business and personal life, value refers to the importance, utility, or benefit of something. When you create value for others, you become indispensable. Perspective. Your perspective is your particular point of view, your way of seeing or understanding something. Changes in perspective can lead to life changes. Determination. The quality of having firmness of purpose, of continuing to strive toward a goal even when facing difficulties. It was determination that allowed the protagonist to persist through his transformation. Entrepreneurship. The activity of creating, organizing, and managing a business, taking on financial risks to do so. But more deeply, it's a mindset of creating value and solving problems. But here's what I want you to understand. These aren't just words to memorize. They're concepts to live by. They're principles to apply in your daily life. Now, let me share some additional insights on how you can apply these lessons to your own life, because knowledge without application is just entertainment. First, examine your beliefs about yourself. Make an honest list of how you define yourself. Write down sentences that start with "I am," and see how many are based on limitations versus possibilities. For every limiting belief you identify, challenge yourself to find evidence to the contrary, or at least alternative possibilities. Second, identify what you have to offer. We all have something valuable, even if it's not obvious. It could be your ability to listen, your experience overcoming specific challenges, your unique knowledge, your technical skills, your creativity, your enthusiasm, your unique perspective on life. Make a list of what you could give or offer to the world. Third, start small, but start. Transformation doesn't require dramatic, immediate changes. The beggar in our story started by simply offering flowers. You can start with small acts of value, helping a colleague, sharing useful knowledge, offering a simple service, creating something small but meaningful. Fourth, shift your focus from scarcity to abundance. Instead of focusing on what you don't have, focus on what you can create, what you can give, what you can build. This shift in mental focus is transformative. Fifth, see every interaction as an opportunity for value exchange, not just in business transactions, but in personal conversations, family relationships, social interactions. Always ask yourself, how can I add value to this situation? If you're committing to applying at least one of these strategies in your life, leave "I will apply" in the comments and tell me which strategy you'll start with first. Remember, the secret isn't to change your circumstances first. The secret is to change your mindset first. When you change how you think about yourself, your possibilities, and your relationship with the world, your circumstances automatically begin to shift to align with your new mindset. The beggar in our story discovered that he wasn't a beggar disguised as a businessman. He was a businessman disguised as a beggar. And you? Who are you really beneath the limitations you've imposed on yourself? What extraordinary potential is waiting to be discovered and developed? Napoleon Hill was absolutely right when he said, "You become what you think about." But let me expand on that. You become what you think about consistently, with emotion, and backed by action. Thoughts alone aren't enough. You need to think with emotional conviction and then act on those thoughts. The beggar didn't just think about giving flowers. He went out, gathered the flowers, and started offering them. This story teaches us that greatness isn't determined by where you start, but by how you choose to grow. It's not determined by your current circumstances, but by your vision of your future possibilities. It's not determined by what you have, but by the value you create. Your transformation journey begins with a single decision. The decision to see yourself not as a victim of your circumstances, but as the architect of your future. The decision to focus not on what you can receive, but on what you can give. The decision to not accept limitations as permanent, but to see them as temporary challenges to overcome. If this video touched your heart, if this story awakened something within you, if you're feeling a spark of possibility igniting in your mind, then I've achieved my goal. Because the purpose of this story isn't just to entertain or inspire, it's to transform. Now it's your turn. Your transformation story is waiting to be written. Your potentials are waiting to be discovered. Your entrepreneurial, creative, successful version is waiting to emerge. Don't limit yourself. Don't accept "I'm just" as a final statement about your identity. See yourself as strong, capable, creative, valuable, and successful. Because when your thoughts change, when your mindset transforms, your reality has no choice but to follow suit. Remember, your greatness is determined by your thoughts. This is a timeless truth that continues to be proven by all those who dare to change their mindset first and then change their reality. If this video changed your perspective, if you're walking away with a different view of your possibilities, please leave a like to help me reach more people who need to hear this message. Subscribe to the channel for more transformative content like this. And most importantly, share this video with someone you know needs to hear this story. Because transformation is contagious. When you change, you inspire others to change too. When you discover your potential, you help others discover theirs. In the comments, I want to know, what was your biggest takeaway from watching this video? What limiting belief are you ready to challenge? What potential are you ready to explore? Your response might inspire hundreds of others who read the comments. Until the next video, remember, your thoughts today are creating your reality tomorrow. Choose them wisely, keep thinking big and living even bigger. Your transformation begins now. Your success story is just starting. And I can't wait to see what you'll build with this new mindset. Thank you for watching, thank you for being open to transformation, and thank you for being part of this journey of growth. Until next time.